Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. Attorney General Pam Bondi went before the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, and it did not go well for her. This was her first time before an oversight panel since she got the job as Attorney General, and it really showed. She was combative and angry, unwilling to answer any of the questions she didn't want to answer, and only wanting to answer them the way she felt would be in line with the administration's narrative. When Representative Jerry Nadler asked her, "How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?" She initially started to protest, and when Jerry Nadler repeated, "How many have you indicted?" she said, "Excuse me, I'm going to answer the question." So he said, "Answer the question." She said, "No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question. Your theatrics are ridiculous." To which Representative Nadler responded, "No, you're going to answer the question the way I asked it." To which she responded, "I'm not going to get into the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question." It's really telling that she yells about theatrics when she's yelling at a person who is simply asking questions in a very calm and rational manner. If anyone could be accused of theatrics, it would be her. And anyone in the room and anyone watching could see that. She went on to claim that this administration was the most transparent administration in American history. They had released millions of pages of documents, and the president himself had signed into law the release of those documents, all while surrounded by piles of redacted documents. Claims of transparency ring a bit hollow when you're presenting it surrounded by evidence of the exact opposite. She then fell back on the typical Republican tactic of whataboutism, mentioning, "Oh, well, what about Merrick Garland?" Merrick Garland, of course, being her predecessor as Attorney General under former President Joe Biden. While there are certainly a lot of very valid complaints and questions about Merrick Garland's time as Attorney General, this isn't one of them, and this has nothing to do with why she is there before the Judiciary Committee. Merrick Garland isn't there. She is. She's the one that has to be answering these questions, not him. And of course she knows that. It's typical deflection. It's trying to get the now mounting pressure off of her and shift it onto something else, possibly even unrelated, which of course she doubles down on, then going on about how the Dow right now, the Dow is over 50,000. The S&P is at almost 7,000. The NASDAQ is smashing record. America's 401k and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. Why would we be talking about that? That's not what they're there to talk about. They're there to talk about Epstein and her to answer questions about it, not about the economy. Bringing that topic up has no relevance. And as an attorney, she should know that. When a representative asked for all the survivors in the room to raise their hands if they had not met with the Department of Justice, every single survivor raised their hand. And Pam Bondi refused to even turn around to look at them when they did. I can think of no image more emblematic of the way the administration has been handling the Epstein situation and its victims as the Attorney General literally turning her back on the victims, refusing to acknowledge them when they are standing before her, or supposed behind her, and refusing to take accountability for how badly they've handled it. It has been clear from the start the Department of Justice had no interest in getting justice for victims. All they cared about was protecting the victimizers, making sure all those men of power and renown never had to be accountable for the actions that they did. They're more like the Department of Obstruction of Justice. And I suppose to a certain degree I understand. If they actually actively pursued these men and actually tried to get them convicted for their crimes, it would decimate the Republican Party and the rich men who fund them. So their failures in this regard are not out of incompetence, it is out of self-preservation, which is why the Department of Justice under President Trump and the administration in general will never do what's right, because what's right would be bad for them. Personally, I have no real love for Merrick Garland as Attorney General. I think he was much better suited for a seat on the Supreme Court, which was of course denied to him when he was nominated by President Obama, by Mitch McConnell and his fellow Republicans back in 2016. His perceived faults in that role were not out of malice or incompetence. But Pam Bondi as Attorney General does what she does, knowing how bad it is. Merrick Garland may not have been a good Attorney General, but Pam Bondi is a bad Attorney General. During the hearing, Pam Bondi had a binder full of printouts of what appeared to be the search histories of various Congress members from when they searched the database of the Epstein files in the Department of Justice Annex, which one representative described as a room where there's only 4 computers with 2 people monitoring everything they did, and they even had to log them in. So there was at least the perception of security and privacy while they looked through what was claimed to be the unredacted Epstein files, each one being logged in with a separate ID and login, which allowed Pam Bondi to go back and see everything they had searched, which is absolutely a violation of the separation of powers between the administration, the Department of Justice, and Congress. As they said, essentially, they were being spied upon. I can only imagine the firestorm that would emerge if the roles had been reversed and it was a Democratic Department of Justice that had been found to be spying upon Republican representatives for their own political gain. But Pam Bondi went into that hearing knowing that she would suffer no accountability. She had no risk of real consequence even after this was revealed. She's one of President Trump's most loyal officers. He'll never get rid of her, so she has nothing to fear. Or at the very least, that's how she clearly sees it. And really, it opens the question up to if they are tracking what Congress people are searching for and seeing in those files, what else are they tracking? How deep does this spying go? Not to mention, as it turns out, those supposedly fully unredacted Epstein files were not, in fact, fully redacted and contained many redactions, likely still protecting many of Epstein's co-conspirators and fellow victimizers. But it's clear Pam Bondi came into the hearing ready with information she planned to use against those who would be questioning her. Information she wasn't supposed to have in the first place. It really is a troubling revelation that could have some far-reaching implications, but just how far is yet to be determined. During her time before the committee, Pam Bondi was not above personal attacks. When Representative Thomas Massie, a fellow Republican, pressed her on why the redactions in the released Epstein files did not comply with the Epstein transparency law that he himself had helped get passed, namely the fact that several of the victims' names in those files were left unredacted, yet many of the victimizers' names were redacted and shielded from scrutiny and identification, making it incredibly clear that the administration's priority was to protect those who did the crimes, not the ones who the crimes were perpetrated against. She called him a failed politician and a hypocrite. Honestly, the hypocrisy is on her, since when you think of a failed politician, her boss is the first thing that comes to your mind. If there were such a thing as a dictionary entry for failed politician, Donald Trump's face would be right there. I think her anger directed towards Representative Massie is explainable because he is a Republican. And how dare he go against the president and his own party by even insinuating they could do anything wrong? She, and by extension the president, clearly view him as disloyal, and to President Trump, disloyalty is the greatest sin. When Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin pushed back on her and said, "You're not showing a lot of interest in the victims, whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the homicidal government violence against citizens in Minneapolis. As Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims," which of course is completely true. To which he responded that he was a washed-up loser lawyer, which makes you think maybe she was looking in a mirror, since that description would perfectly describe herself. It's clear Attorney General Pam Bondi really thought she cooked there. In her appearance before the committee, was running defense for the president and the administration like she was playing at last week's Super Bowl. She was angry, she was combative, she very clearly was not interested in answering any of the committee's questions that would expose just how badly handled this investigation had been and how badly her department and the administration as a whole has failed the victims. And rather than painting the administration in a good light, all she seemed to have done was prove unquestionably that there is a cover-up going on to protect powerful elites from accountability and punishment for their numerous crimes, chief among them the President of the United States, Donald Trump. As Representative Thomas Massie said, this is bigger than Watergate. This cover-up spans decades, and as he said to Attorney General Pam Bondi, she is responsible for a portion of it. His mention of Watergate is actually particularly relevant in this case because, as we remember, in the end it was not President Nixon himself who was convicted and imprisoned. It was his Attorney General, John Mitchell, who ended up serving 19 months behind bars in 1977 in the fallout of the Watergate scandal. So history may very well repeat itself, and Pam Bondi may find herself as the one serving jail time when this all comes to a conclusion. Though her performance before the Judiciary Committee would imply she does not fear any such consequence, I think that confidence may be misplaced in this case. Despite their numerous attempts to obfuscate and hide and protect, there is no question that justice will eventually be done and punishments will be felt. And the list of those who will feel them is long, and Pam Bondi's name is undoubtedly on that list. She has made herself a part of the cover-up, so she will have to go down when the cover-up is fully revealed, and those black bars can no longer protect those who did wrong from the consequences of their actions. I have to say, though, my favorite interaction from from her time before the Judiciary Committee was when Representative Becca Blanchett said, "This is not a game, Secretary." And Pam Bondi said, "I am Attorney General." And Blanchett said, "My apologies, I couldn't tell." I was like, ooh, sick burn. It was just too perfect. All right, guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, I'm going to cut you off another slice of news. And don't forget to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you find it.